This podcast is brought to you by Crisp. It is a software that auto-magically mute background noise in any communication app. No more embarrassing dog barks, traffic noises, crying babies, and family chatters when you're doing your calls from home or the nearby cafe. With Crisp, those noises will be muted and your caller will not be able to hear any of them. Not only is it able to remove background noises, it can also even remove the ones coming from your caller. So all you get is high quality audio without the distractions. Crisp supports any devices and over 800 apps such as Zoom, Teams, and WebEx. Try out the world's best AI-powered noise cancelling technology for free. Simply go to adriantan.com.sg/crisp to get started. Welcome to the Adrian Tan Show. This is my podcast where I have deep conversations with the people who are enabling organizations to become ready for the future of work. My guests include a mindfulness coach, the folks behind Singapore's most popular investment app, and many more. They all have one thing in common, and that is to level up your organizations through your people. My guest today is Gurunath Hari. He is the head of practice and data scientist at Emineo Pursuits. Emineo Pursuits started in Singapore in 2014 as a social enterprise, helping leaders nurture employees to build themselves to love the work they do. A global HR wellness leader, Hari pioneered innovative approach and service portfolio that includes PEAKISM, the 21st century approach to peak performance, and scientifically validated holistic wellness assessment tools. He is also the author of research-based Amazon best-selling book, The 6 Dimensions Overcome Presenteeism, Excel in Work and in Life. Please welcome my guest, Gurunath Hari. Hi Hari, thank you for coming onto the show.
Hello, Adrian. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And for the first time, I'm doing this on video, so I'm really excited. I hope I'm doing all this well. And thank you so much for agreeing and, well, encouraging me to try this out on video, which is my very first time. So I hope all goes well. And we actually connected through a webinar, which I've delivered for Wanted on employee experience. And that's where we got to know each other. And I'm quite fascinated to also learn more about what you are doing. So maybe for a start, for folks who are not familiar, maybe you could give us a rundown of your history, where you come from, what you're doing, and what are the exciting stuff that you're doing with your company right now.
Wow, that's a long question, but I'll try to keep it as crisp as possible. So, Adrian, let me go from now backwards. That may be easier. So, right now, I'm very honored and thankful to you for having this podcast. It's a great way to reach some of the messaging that I have for the world and especially for my clients through this media. So, thank you for that. I actually started getting deeply involved in developing people over the last, I would say, 10 years. Before that, I used to be developing people more from a very operational perspective. I used to lead the Asia Pacific, cartridge business for a large MNC. And yeah, and so around 10 years back, I had an opportunity to move from, sales and marketing type of regional roles to some kind of a teaching, occupation within the same company. And I never looked back. It's been a fantastic experience seeing people coming into some of my classes with a lot of equity in terms of skills, competencies, and then giving them that little extra in the margin, so to say, to get them to be where we want them to be. And then they go out and then they get their successes and come back and tell us what they are. That to me, I've been in sales a long time, Adrian, and that has been one of the greatest fulfilling aspects of my professional career. So that got me hooked. And after that, there was a time in 2014 when I authored a book, which is at some point maybe we can touch on it, but that was based on a life experience I had in 2010. Sorry, 2001, when my son was just 1 year old, and I was laid off, which is no surprise in today's context. But that triggered certain, emotions in me, and that resulted in a book which became an Amazon bestseller in 2016. And that spawned off the company that I'm currently trying to promote, which is called Emineo Pursuits. The book itself was my discovery and my journey into discovering what is holistic well-being, because well-being was a concept that wasn't very popular back in 2001, which is almost 20 years ago, right? So it was not very well documented, very well spoken about. And back then itself, thanks to my little bit of providential, if you say, heritage. I come from a family who are fairly conservative. At the same time, I've been blessed with being able to practice a lot of self care and well being from a very delicate age. I was being initiated as a monk back in, and I was 14 years old. And that kind of laid the foundations, I guess, for me to be able to come up with this book. The book itself was pretty much, it was more written, I would say, for me. It was a reflection or a meditation on what I went through. And I have documented interviews with some amazing people here in Singapore and other countries who I really think are role models, for us to know what really well-being can be. And I'm talking about people who have been through unimaginable adversities. And how did they come out of it, become so popular in the media that they were documented. So I came up with this thing called Six Dimensions, Adrian. And right now, I'm so delighted in a way, because I'm also saddened that the pandemic has caused distress to a lot of people. But in a way, I feel very blessed and grateful that the work I did, started 20 years back, is becoming extremely relevant today. You're looking at things like people suffering from mental health because of being working from home and what have you. So it's just that, I think the time has come. My time, or the time for my business is now, and I'm just so grateful for it. So Emineo Pursuits is where I am today. Around this road, I had a little blip of, again, providential opportunity to start another company, which was leveraging my leadership skills back when I was in this large MNC. And I founded a born in cloud tech company along with a group of like-minded people. I had the unique privilege and blessing of being the CEO of this company. And I'm very humbled to say that in the 2 years that I led the company, both the years Microsoft nominated us as the best partner in their Best Partner Award program. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a flavor. One last point, maybe your audience might be interested, is that I do have a very strong, I would say, relatively strong medical background. I'm a biomedical engineer by education, and I've also practiced, being a biomedical engineer for 14 years of my career. And then, of course, my career took me to telecom and printing and consulting and all those kind of things. That's where I am today.
That's such an interesting chain of events and also the stuff that you've been involved with. I just want to go back to touch a bit on wellness, which is something on the lips of almost every HR as well as business leaders recently.
Truly.
Given how pandemic has forced many people to work from home,
Yeah.
it also come together with a set of challenges that many did not foresee. Because your home will be different from mine, and also there will be a lot of external factors that one has to undertake. From what you are seeing right now, what are the things that you feel companies should really be focusing on, or what might they be doing wrongly, given your vast amount of experience when it comes to wellness?
Yeah, that's a great point, Adrian. The fact of the matter is companies were unprepared to tackle this problem. Let's face it. They were not prepared. Nobody told them that 20 is going to be, pandemic year. So it is very few organizations I can think of. The company I used to work for, they were already ahead of the curve in terms of, having employees work virtually. But a vast majority of them had to scramble, right? Business continuity was one of the biggest things, for people at that time. The I won't call it a mistake. I would probably call it lack of preparation. And then, because of lack of preparation, it's about HR not knowing where to go. Where do you go to, right? Whom do you talk to? Who are the people who know about this topic, right? And I can certainly, I can say humbly that I'm one of the few who have done research on this topic. So the mistake that they do is they are grappling for solutions, right? And then I wanted to touch on this as well, which is I find a lot of interest by venture capitalists to pump money into all these fly-by-wire app producers who are smart guys. They know how to create mobile apps and stuff, and then they throw a few ingredients into it. It's like cooking in a cookbook. You throw a few psychologists, a few coaches, provide a platform, and then push it out to the customer. That to me is a disaster, to put it bluntly, because they are trying to diminish the actual the underlying challenges that employees actually have, by providing a solution that I feel will only cause more harm than good. And let me explain, when you talk about the mistakes, right? If somebody adopts these kind of solutions, of course, you and I, you're a great HR person yourself, Adrian. I know your background. And we both know, and the scientific community knows, that you can massage data any which way you want, correct? There will always be some aspects which are positive, and there'll be a ton of things that are not positive, right? And usually, in order for somebody to prove that they took the right decision, they would showcase the positive aspects of that particular pursuit or initiative, right? But here's the reality. I'll give you a very simple, real situation. Imagine this. Imagine, to your point, a customer, or an organization, in an ill-informed fashion, dives headlong into adopting this quote-unquote mobile app that looks so sexy and seems to be the panacea for a lot of problems, right? The first issue to ask yourself is, okay, today this employee X is in my organization. The organization has a B2B arrangement with the app supplier. As long as this employee X is in my organization, he's going to get some benefit. Now, what happens to this employee X, who either leaves the organization or the company has to let this person go? What then happens to this person's mental wellness? So, are you now talking about only being so selfish as an organization that as long as he's with me, I will take care of him? As long as he's out, I don't give a damn. Because these B2B, B2C app producers, they are only applicable as long as the employee or the human being here, you and I, human being people, we are human capitalists, right? So if you remove me as a human and put me as an employee number, that's what's going to happen, right? I'm going to be getting the benefit of some kind of a mental, health enhancing kind of, assets. The moment I'm not there, I'm gone. So that's not the approach. And that is what Emineo Pursuits wants to, really proclaim to the world. Do not adopt these apps. I want to be very clear. Do not. I'm very, very clear about this. You have to help employees build resilience. And resilience does not come by pushing employees into therapy at the drop of a hat, which is what these apps do. So, and it's not Asian culture, Adrian, and you and I are Asians. We are proud Asians. This is a very American nonsense that is being dumped into Asia. In America, you have a therapy for everything. We don't do that.
And a drug for everything.
Yeah, and a drug, exactly, and a drug for everything. We are not that way. We do not need to mimic and ape and adopt these pretty superficial stuff. I completely want to keep this as a very distant. I don't want to completely ignore or overlook its value, but I want to keep it as a very distant third option. The first option is the organization has a good culture. If organizational culture is good, if the values are good, if the leadership practices these values, thumbs up. The second thing, if that seems to be not so great, then at least use L&D resources and share knowledge, share education in order for employees to build the strength. It's like going to a physical gym, right? We go to a gym to build our muscles. There are abilities for the mind to build resilience as well. There are situations where what we do in our versatile resilience course is we teach people the 15 different type of cognitive distortions, which nobody knows. Nobody knows. I've been in corporate life long enough. Again, it comes from the US, right? They throw something which is sexy called it's called unconscious bias. That's one of the courses I knew was done in our organization. And I know this, it's all these, monthly, fads that come out in the US, and then they dump it. If you're an American company, they'll dump US stuff on you. If you're a European company, they'll dump European stuff on you. But we are Asians. We have a different, huge amount of local wisdom, traditional wisdom, traditional ways of managing stress, like Tai Chi in the case of China. You have, Qigong. I'm a practitioner of Tai Chi myself, and I also do yoga. We've got India, providing you with so many things. There is absolutely no need for all these apps. What's important is, now that we know that there are certain aspects of psychology, which is what I call as cognitive distortions, You don't have to become a mental patient to learn this stuff. You can teach this in a workshop. I tell people, don't make a person a patient and then give him a treatment.
Mm.
Treat the person as a person and give him the empowerment for him or her to, strengthen their mind, which is exactly the strategy that we have.
And I do agree on what you mentioned earlier on, where culture is really the first thing to take care of. I've gone through quite a number of reports and articles where mental well-being or burnout really happen when the company tend to overstep their boundaries and enforce things which are just not possible during a work from home kind of situation, where you need to tackle your home duties, your familial duties, and at the same time have to catch up on all the Slack messages, email messages, all throughout the weekend. It is almost impossible. So I do agree culture is the first thing that company have to fix. But onto the app part, I just want to understand from you, what's your take on apps that are related to meditation? Meditation is something that I personally do, and I do find it to be pretty useful. Not so much from a therapeutic perspective, but I think the time to an opportunity to just sit down and focus is really good. And I do feel because it has been turned into an app for most of them, it has driven a lot more awareness as well as adoption across the population with apps such as Headspace, Calm, Insight Timer. Is that something that you personally feel people should still try out?
Certainly, there's a difference between what you are saying, Adrian, and what I touched on. You know, to add to your list of apps, there's something called HoloSync. And these are all different types of things that you put on your ear to kind of, is that what you're saying? You refer to those kind of stuff where it kind of guides you through a meditation?
Yeah, there are guided ones, there are unguided ones.
Okay,
Personally, I've passed the guided stage. I'm currently on unguided ones, but I still use the app as a means to keep track and also to get the 5 minute bell to come in.
fine. Like I said, anything that you can do for your self-care is different from therapy. Yeah, the only thing I am against is giving unfettered and ready access for a person to just press a button and get straight to a psychology or a psychiatrist.
Mm.
That's the problem that I find is dangerous, which is what some of these applications are being rewarded for lack of any better knowledge. The people who give all these fancy awards are giving these platform providers in almost every country. I used to live in the Middle East for a short while, and I recently saw some student in a university in the Middle East being awarded or getting some reward for creating a very silly platform that connects a person to a psychiatrist. And this person is being given an award for the most innovative, which I don't think is, it's just maybe showcases this person's technical competency, but it doesn't endorse this person's a human competency about understanding the subject in any depth. So yeah, to your point, I don't have anything to say against guided meditation or anything that keeps track of your routines. That's all perfectly fine. Yeah.
So, based on your personal perspective, when should therapy come into the picture?
Awesome question. So, are you familiar with this term economic moat?
No, please explain.
Okay. So when you buy stocks, this is a stock kind of area. So when you buy stocks, how do you choose a stock, right? So there are certain parameters, PE ratio, the company's business, the competition, stuff like that. So one of the parameters that people look at is when you pick a stock is this thing called economic moat, MOAT. And if you know this word moat still refers to the olden times when there used to be a fortress, and a moat is typically a feature of a lake or water in between the fort and the rest of the land to act as a physical barrier for an army that's trying to attack the fort. That's what a moat is. So they use that metaphor to call an economic moat. So economic moat is, if you had a business called Career Hero, right? You started it.
Yep, I
So
had that.
you had a reasonably good moat because there were not many players who could compete with you, correct? So your business, I would say, had an economic moat and it made it attractive for somebody to invest, for example, right? The same thing actually can be picturized for our mind. Our mind, when we are untrained, is like a fortress. Our brain is sitting inside our skull, and this brain is thinking. It's a thinking brain, right? And we are getting hit constantly by people talking to us. You're looking at things that may not be helpful. You are listening to things that can be disturbing. So through our sense organs, these are all, I would picture it like arrows being shot at you. Okay, imagine the fort, right? And today, without any training, not everybody is blessed to have a strong moat. I call it the cognitive moat. Okay, so there is not a strong moat for people to be able to fend off these arrows, and then they become mentally ill because these things get into their system and it affects them. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to create two more modes. Okay, I call, so the first mode, you asked when do you need to go for therapy, right? So if you don't have any mode, the moment it hits you, I'm a huge student of Jordan Peterson, Professor Jordan Peterson. He always says we all are pretty okay. We don't become mentally sick easily. He uses the term called cognitive complexity. And he says it's when people get hit with multiple things at the same time. Somebody might lose a pet, somebody might lose a loved one, somebody might lose a job, somebody might have got a diagnosis. All of this happens at the same time. Then what happens is the person thinks, gosh, this is too much, I can't take it. And then he uses the metaphor of a balloon, right? So you blow a balloon, it keep blowing, and then he says at some point the balloon will burst. And he says that this balloon, which is our mental health, will tend to burst in the space of what he calls as genetic susceptibility. And that susceptibility can be things like schizophrenia or anxiety disorder and a whole bunch of other mental issues. So he says, people, that is when they become mentally sick, and that is when you give them some therapy. So to your question, I think I answered it. You don't just give somebody who has some problem that can be solved first. The problem with these apps, going back to it, is I don't know when I'm supposed to go to this app. I'm at the drop of the first hat, straight away go and talk to a counselor and speak to the counselor, and this person will start giving me therapy. Okay, so what we need to do, Adrian, is we need to empower people to build out these two modes. That's the first step. We are not doing it today in the world anywhere, and it's a global first that we are doing. And I'm not saying this with any boastful way. I'm saying this in the most humble way, because I've researched this topic so much, and I know that there are ways by which people can be helped and they can be allowed to prevent a mental issue happening to them if organizations, if the government, if any governing body are able to take this and try it out first. So what we do in the versatile resilience program is we build out these modes inside out. So the inside out part is, the first is, as we know, we have a natural mode which depending on the person can be very fragile, can be very vulnerable. And some people, maybe like you and me, we are blessed, we learned all this stuff. Without learning this, even you and me will be vulnerable, right? But you have learned, I have learned, and that we have extended our moat very, very strongly. It takes a lot for something to affect me. I can tell you that. I've been through a lot in life. I won't be easily getting into a mental issue. I can be very confident of saying that, right? Because I have taken a lot of hits. I have built my resilience over time. So using that, you can prevent having to go to the therapy. When do you go to therapy? Like I told you, when complexity has hit so much, when people have ignored or have been kept in the dark about what they could do from time to time as these things came to hit them. Because see, if one arrow is shot at a person, you can stop it. But if you allow that one arrow to come and hit, then after some time another arrow hits, and if you don't know how to stop these arrows, eventually you're going to be killed, right? Yeah, that's what is happening today. A lot of young 20-year-olds, which I am now mentoring a few of them, they are, it's not much going wrong with them. It's few things, but it's enough for them to feel completely blown out. So somebody, and I've done that. So I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a clinical psychologist, I'm just a common guy who has studied this topic and is using like real life experiences to then make it easily accessible for people to build out their cognitive modes. So the answer should be there, Adrian. We don't even want to go to therapy. I don't. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to go to IMH coincidentally just to test out how these people operate. Yeah, I have. I won't say post. I did have a situation when I had a panic attack, and then I went to the clinical. I went to the polyclinic, and they asked me, Hari, Mr. Hari, would you like to go to IMH for a consultation? I jumped on it. I said I would love to go because I want to see what they do. And guess what? This is my second trip tomorrow because I want to go and validate some stuff. They only have two things, Adrian: behavioral therapy or tablets. That's it. That's it. And once you get sucked into that, behavioral therapy, of course, is very dicey because it's about a person listening to your, sob stories and trying to give you some succor. The moment you start taking tablets, you're dead. You don't know where it's going to lead you.
Okay. So I do understand where you're coming from. It is essentially building up the mental muscles for people over time. So when the heavy lifting opportunity comes along, then of course they have the muscles to tackle on. Of course, there'll be certain stage where the thing is so heavy that the muscles are just not sufficient. That is probably where the therapy will come in.
Exactly.
So to your versatile resilience program, could you just give an example of a thing that you would do with a client or during a workshop that would work towards them building up more mental resilience?
Certainly. So in the workshop, we have a couple of elements, Adrian. We have some pre-work where we ask people to come to the workshop with an existing adversity. Okay, anything, and I don't, at that stage, we don't define what adversity really is. We just leave it to them to figure out whatever they think adversity is, and then they come to the workshop. Okay. After that, we then define what adversity is. And then we share the fact that there are 6 types of adversities. It's not just one adversity. So we actually help people from that point onwards to really figure out, break down what exactly is the adversity I'm facing. Because you and I know, you might have come across friends in your life, if they have a breakup with one of their partners, they think the whole world has collapsed. Correct?
That's right.
Yeah, and it looks like everything has gone wrong. It's not true. It's only a social element that went out. So I help people, first of all, to be able to simplify what the adversity is. The next step we do is we talk about giving them a model about how the mind really works. So when we look at a situation, we look at it, and then this thing called cognitive distortion happens. And this is universal. It is every human being. We are intuitively and genetically incapable. Well, let me just rephrase that. Genetically, maybe we are okay, but socially, over a period of time, as we grow, we become incapable of being able to see a situation for what it is. For example, I think you and I have seen this, a simple test where, you look at something from an angle, it looks like a line, right? If you look at my finger now, if I orient it exactly to the camera, you will think I have one finger. But if I do this, suddenly you find I have 4 fingers. So if somebody is just looking at a situation like this and they already start calling it out, they'll say, yeah, Hari has one finger. Whereas a person who is not biased or who doesn't have the cognitive distortion will say, can I look at it from a different angle if there is a different angle? Before they describe the situation. That's when you really are able to really form a proper opinion about, oh, this is Hari's hand. Right? The same analogy applies to life. So we look at a situation, our mind very quickly, decides, and these are all our comfort thinking, funnily enough. Each of these 15 distortions is actually our comfort zones. We like to be polarized. We like to think and look at it as black and white. We like to exaggerate. We like to, fudge things up. And these depend on individuals. Some people may have a few of these. Some people may have a different set. Like I know of individuals who like to exaggerate anything that they look at. And I'll give an example how it sounds. Oh, this guy, he always talks like that. You've seen this comment. Yeah, this is a simple example of what's happening in this person's head. This person might have seen this person doing it 2 or 3 times, and the remaining 98 out of 100 times he has not seen this person. But these 2 3 times becomes the whole, this person is always like that, right? This is a distortion. And a person who thinks of this person like this actually has a problem, because he or she is going to look at every other thing that is disagreeable to this person in this fashion, and that starts molding their life view, the world view. So what we do is we take this stuff that's sitting deep inside a mental hospital's therapy, office, and we bring it right out into a workshop and say, guys, here it is. These are the 15 distortions that human beings have. Now, you take a look at this. Here's an exercise, and I'm going to ask you to take your situation now that you know these 15 distortions. On the left hand side, and this is actually a very well known behavioral therapy technique, where it's called using the legal kind of a game. It's a game, right? So on the left hand side is the prosecutor, and the right hand side is a defendant. So a prosecutor is the person who's your default thinking. So you're saying, this is like this because it's like this. Now you ask the same person to say, now you're the defendant. So how will you defend this situation? And typically, the people will find that they can't defend it because it's like this, right? I showed you my finger. You can't defend that this is only a finger, right? Because the defendant will say, "Can you please ask Mr. Hari to turn his hand?" And now the prosecutor will say, "No, it's not a finger," right? So we make the person, immerse into this thinking for a few minutes. This is the mental gymming that is going to happen.
Hmm.
And then it slowly starts giving them an aha moment. Say, wow. And now they're applying it on their own so-called adversity, right? So we do this, and then slowly people start getting it, and then they start building out what I call as their defensive mode. And then there's a preventive mode, which we can talk if we have the time.
This reminds me of a book which I completed recently called Factfulness by Hans Rosling. And he mentioned about looking at things from different viewpoints. Of course, I'm butchering and summarizing a lot of essence in the book, but it really captured what you just shared, looking at things from different angle. And sometimes even the data itself might not paint the entire picture. You have to look at things beyond the data. Back to the business that you're working on right now. So in terms of your target audience, are you focusing more at the SME, MNC, or as long as it's within a subset of individuals, a team within the company? And under what situation would a business leader or HR may want to consider coming to you to gather some of your assistance and support?
Great question, Adrian. I was recently catching up on a research done by, I think it was Qualtrics. They published a 21 employee experience report. To answer your question, I think every organization needs this. So it doesn't matter what size, small, medium, large enterprise, civil services, uniformed, services, because I have done work on all of these type of customers. If you look at my website, which I could probably quickly just maybe allow me to share my screen here. We can just give you a quick visual to your audience. Let's take a look at this. So, here are some case studies, right? So you can see here that, we've done some work for the Army, and this is a large MNC. And this was a case where we empowered a large organization to enable their leadership team to embrace a very big organizational transformation that they were trying to implement. And if you scroll down, you will see certain testimonials from our customers. And and this actually, like I said, all these customers are valid people who can benefit from the work that we are doing and what we're discussing here.
Got it. And when it comes to the current situation we're in right now, obviously pandemic has restricted a lot of business activities, a lot of collaboration within companies. How has that personally affected your business? Are you conducting workshops through Zoom, and has that affected the outcome that you're hoping to achieve?
Certainly, most certainly, yes. I mean, I'd be dishonest if I told you no. In terms of customer traction, from a business perspective, if I were to talk about it, Definitely, it has been not very helpful. 2020 was a tough year for me, for us. But the flip side of it is, I think, one of the concepts we invented is called peakism, which is the opposite of presenteeism and absenteeism. And you and I are both, we are practice people, right? You practice, I also practice. So as a practitioner of peakism, we use this time to develop new programs. Personally, I've been learning a lot. I got my Scrum Master certification, I got my Agile Facilitator certification, and we build out the Versatile Resilience program. It's all because of the so-called lull in the, so-called business aspect of what we are doing. And to be honest, Adrian, we designed ourselves as a social enterprise. We are not here for the profits. It's the last thing in our minds. And that has to do a lot with where I developed my career. And I'm, at this point, I can tell you that I'm a huge admirer of Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard, who really formed the core of some of my corporate DNA. And I certainly, I am one of those who believes that if you do good for the community and if people see value in what you do, the commerce will follow, right? So from a business perspective, not so great. Yes, I've been doing Zoom. It's helped me a lot because when Zoom became the norm, or virtual interaction became the norm, I could actually launch my versatile resilience program globally. In fact, the pilot which we did was a global pilot. Think about it. If it was not for the pandemic, and if we did not take lemons and made lemonade out of it, I probably had a small Mickey Mouse kind of a launch somewhere in National Library in Singapore, which I respect a lot because I've done this workshop there as well. But what we could do is the pandemic gave us the opportunity to take this lime, make lemonade, and I did a global pilot of this. And it was a phenomenal experience. People from the US who attended it have given me great testimonials, and I'm really, really blessed and grateful for that. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
one thing that I see a lot, and I think most people may also miss out the upside of this pandemic. As much as I'm not hoping for it to be extended, but you do see a lot of things happening which may not have happened otherwise. You're seeing a lot more home chef. You're seeing a lot of chef from hotel coming to hawker center to open their own hipster shops, and I think all these are good for the ecosystem, the business that they're in, and really to provide more options out there. And based on what you're seeing right now and what you could foresee, what do you think would be the biggest change or disruption in your field as we started in 2021 and moving forward?
great question. let me tell you something. I was recently listening to a podcast, and one of the roles, Harvard did some study and they came up with 21 future roles. And one of the roles that I heard which made me laugh is they might in future they might organizations may start hiring distraction prevention coaches.
So basically, the equivalent of a discipline master during our school time.
Yeah, a euphemism for that, I guess. So, so yeah, what disruption is going to happen in the future? Who knows? But I just have a bit of a, what should I say, concern that technology should not always lead change, although it can be used to lead change. Just because I know artificial intelligence, just because I know robotics, just because I know machine learning, which is all true, by the way, I should not invent some kinky stuff that, I start creating, making it look like it's very valuable. And the masses out there, for lack of anything better that they know, they start experimenting with it, which is fine. And I don't mind experimentation. But then if it starts becoming a way of life, you can imagine what's happening today. Look at what Facebook is doing to people. Look at what all these social media apps is doing to people. It's ruining them. Why? And that's the problem. It came at it. In fact, the inside story of Facebook is that people, when Facebook was invented, they already knew the psycho impact of such a thing. But Zuckerberg seemed to have progressed with it because of commercial interests. What he started out in Harvard as a very benign platform to get people to talk to each other suddenly took on a demonic form.
But would
And
you also argue that this are happening because some people may have lesser mental resilience, and which is why they are receptive to all this kind of nudges, psychological plays that all these apps and tech companies are coming up with?
you know what? To be very honest with you, Adrian, it's a lot deeper and more sinister than that. Yeah. You and I, with all our maturity, we can ourselves get addicted to it if we had the time. And the reason for this is because we are all slaves of our hormones. And every second of every minute, as our sense organs are taking in our sensory, perception of stuff, there is a cocktail of hormones being ejected into your blood. And these things can take over. And I can tell you, it's very, very sinister. I mean, we should never, diminish the terrible impact of social media on generations. The internet itself, has its dark internet, as we know. But the thing is, it requires a great amount of human discipline for parents. I get very, very upset or scared when I find young parents, just pushing a MacBook or something into a baby's hands, 2-year-old, 3-year-old hands, and these children are playing something. I don't know what impact it has, but I know one thing. Steve Jobs, he is on record to say that I have not given my children a MacBook or an iPad. He's on record. Why? Why did Steve Jobs, the inventor of the iPad, not give an iPad to his kids?
For obvious reasons, because he knows something bad is going to happen.
Yeah. So, to your point, I am not, favorable to any of these new tech stuff. It has to be, a lot of discipline needs to be there. And without that discipline first being there and the governance first being there, embracing technology is very, very risky.
So, for people who may be struggling with this but have the awareness that they are struggling with this, what are some of the steps that you will advise for them to start taking up in order to slowly weed themselves off all this addiction that they may have over social media?
Yeah, great question, Adrian. you know, from the time a child is maybe 11 years old, I would say, when they can think for themselves, there's a huge value that parents, teachers, and elders can bring to these children. It starts there. Children need to be given confidence that they matter, that they have a purpose in life. Purpose in life at every stage of a person's life cycle is extremely important. And in my book, there is a way by which people can carve out a certain quote unquote, what I call a grand central purpose, GCP. And there's a simple method and a template for us to, kind of unravel that. Okay. If we have that goal in our mind, and if we use our time, and if we are passionate about that goal, automatically that's what adults do, right? Because you and I, we have a higher goal, and we know that we have to pursue that goal. And in the process of pursuing the goal, some of these other things we already recognize it as distractions, and we have the maturity to push it out. Children don't have that. But I don't see any reason why at the age of 11 and 12 onwards, with good parentage, it's possible for us to give these children that vision that tomorrow you're going to be, like maybe do what a great person does. I don't want to take specific examples, but if a child has got an inclination for being a sports person, look at a role model of a sports person and say that you can be like this person, and then allow this person to, this child to be given the resources and the freedom and the space to pursue that. I can talk about my neighbor. I have a wonderful neighbors, around me, and I love what they do for their kid. They have one daughter, and this person, this father, he's a sports person himself, and he's very, healthy physically. They are a lovely family, and this child, they have one daughter, and he has given her the space to, become an athlete. And so from a very young age, she's shown her athletic skills, and they have put her through a sports school in Singapore. That's the way it should be. Automatically when you have that, there's no time for you to mess around with all this nonsense, social media, Instagram, all this crap that's going on. I have very low threshold of tolerance for this stuff, to be very honest with you. Yeah, I think it's not helping society one bit. Maybe at the boundaries it has some positive value, but if you look at how much of good it does versus how much of bad it's doing today, the evils far outweigh the good. I don't know what's your opinion. What is your opinion, Adrian?
Personally, I am quite done with social media to an extent. I do produce, I generate content, I
Yeah,
push it out,
yeah.
but I seldom consume. In fact, I don't have Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter app on my phone. I've deleted them. And I only access Facebook on my laptop. And even so, I install a Chrome app. I can't remember the name right now. I think it's called Nudge, where it automatically removes some of the stuff that makes Facebook addictive. For example, it will grayscale the color. So because color is an addictive element, it would actually remove all the side banner. So you are only seeing something like a WordPress, just going in to write. It's like a Microsoft Word kind of thing. But I think that naturally has kept down the amount of time that I spend a lot on social media, or I used to spend a lot on social media. I still leverage a lot on LinkedIn because of
Yeah,
work purpose, but I use a lot of automation to help me do stuff. So I don't really spend a lot of time again consuming all those stuff. I mean, consumption does, of course, provide a huge dopamine hit, but I'm trying to remind myself every time if I want to consume the same dopamine hit, I would prefer to do it through creation of an article, creation of a podcast, and in today's instance, creation of a video cast. And so I think those are much more interesting. So even to the extent, I think the key is really to be a producer rather than a consumer. As a producer on the same channel, the kind of gains that you get is tremendously different. I mean, look at the highest earner on YouTube. He happens to be a what, 9-year-old? And he made last year, if I don't remember wrongly, 25 million US dollar just reviewing toys. But then he's one of the few that are reviewing toys. Most kids are looking at him reviewing toys. So unless they take a step to the other side, go into the dark side, so to speak, and started reviewing their toys and really become a producer, I think what you mentioned really holds true, where all the bad stuff would just come into play. People are just getting the dopamine hit, occupying their time needlessly, and then just going all this doom scrolling on a regular basis, which of course deplete them time to do other stuff.
truly. So actually, you partially answered a question that I had. I wanted to follow up on that. What might have been the reasons why you chose to kind of dissociate yourself? Was there some
Uh,
experience that you went through that made you do that?
I realized that overconsumption of social media, and of course studies have proven it, you tend to be very depressed, tend to become more depressed because when you go into social media, you don't realize that you're actually watching the highlight reels of somebody's life. And it is human behavior or reaction to compare yourself, your
Exactly.
sucky self right now, versus the highlight reels of other people, which honestly doesn't make sense, but
Totally.
it still make you feel bad. And I feel in order to keep myself positive, I need to stop from doing so. So instead of looking at Facebook and reminding myself not to compare, I would rather just not compare to begin with. And also, going back to the app that I have installed on my Chrome plugin, my Chrome, it also has this function where it auto follow people. So I actually reached a stage where when I go into my Facebook, I don't see a lot of stuff. Then I started to follow people selectively, politicians, thought leaders. So it became more like a LinkedIn-ish kind of feed where I get those kind of bite-sized information that I think I really want to consume that I couldn't find in mainstream media. For example, during the general election, there are things that you want to find on social
Yeah,
media that are more trending.
truly.
So those are the things that which drove me to react in that way.
Awesome, awesome, Adrian. See, you at your age and stage of maturity, you are doing this. Is there any reason why you would not want this to be taught in the schools?
Oh, of course not. A lot of all this stuff, in my opinion, should be taught in the school. How to manage, like what we're talking about, even financial management. This is
Yeah,
something that I always thought. I always feel
totally.
that school should be teaching. My own theory is because Singapore is such consumer-based economy, it is quite counterintuitive to teach people to save money and not to spend when spending money is what is driving the economy. So, a judgment call has to be made, and unfortunately, it is at the disadvantage of our kids.
And may I just add to your point, funnily enough, even in a country like the US, and I hate to bring US in the discussion, but I'm saying this because I want to highlight a country like the US where people are being doled out. Singapore doesn't dole money, right, to people, but in the US they're doling out money. Even there, they found that the biggest issue that employees have is financial wellness. So, financial wellness is one of the 6 dimensions in the book I wrote. And I did, in one of the workshops that I've done surveys on many companies, and from the data I have, it's true that mental wellness is the least strong among the 6. But guess what? The second least strong dimension is financial wellness in Singapore and other countries as well in ASEAN. So you're right. Why should we not teach some of these things? When we start young. So yeah, I mean, I think these are simple things, right, Adrian? It's not rocket science.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully, with the new Minister of Education, all these changes could slowly come into the system and really have a larger impact on the younger kids. Of course, not to abstain parents from the responsibility, we should still do it, but having alignment from the school would definitely be helpful as well.
I just want to touch on, you triggered something in my mind when you said parents. Again, from personal experience, I can tell you, and I don't have data to prove it yet, but I have a strong suspicion that half, I'm again saying carefully, half the marital discord, half the divorces that happen, half the breakups that happen might be able to be prevented if people could get around their mental or cognitive distortions.
I completely agree. And in fact, I think there are data out there. I think MSF actually did a survey during phase 2 during phase 2, they did a survey, which of course covered phase 1. They actually experienced, if I don't remember wrongly, 26 or 35% jump in calls to their hotline of all these familial issues, which of course, when people are outside working and then they come home late, they don't have time to interact, of course the chances of having an accident or a situation would be reduced. But when you have to work together, seeing each other 24/7, friction would bound to arise. But then, like you said, without strong mental resilience or knowing how to react and handle all this situation well enough, explosions are bound to happen.
Something, and if you talk to any of these counselors, if you ask them what was the root cause for some of these things that exploded and became so wide that the gap cannot be filled anymore, you laugh at it. Really? This started because you didn't press the toothpaste the way it was meant to be pressed? Is that what started this? That's how it is. It is ridiculous how these things become, and it's all because of cognitive distortion. Because, for example, if you take the toothpaste example, right? If the spouse, if the wife, is a stickler for perfection, and she has to press it somewhere, and the husband come and just squeeze it right in the middle, things like that, for example, right? It can tick her off, right? And she say, hey, you know what, bro, can you press from the end? And guess what? The man being the man, he's not going to he's going to hold the paste and press it right in the middle again, right? So she's going to get ticked off. Now, what's the cognitive distortion here? The distortion is you're a perfectionist. So if the lady starts, taking a step back and saying, you know what, how does it really matter? It's just me looking at a toothpaste that doesn't look clean and neat. Okay, fine. One solution is let him keep a toothpaste for himself. I'll spend $1 more and keep my own toothpaste. End of story. Doesn't have to become a battle, right?
For people who may not know, there are actually toothpaste that come in a standing tube. You don't squeeze them, you just press a button. Maybe for people who are suffering from such issues and refuse to have separate toothpaste, get those toothpaste instead, get those standing kind. That will solve all your problems.
Yeah, it's truly. It's always like that. It's always small things that create a big issue. And I've been through it. I think every family can, every couple can breathe through it. There are small things, your choice of what the child should wear for an evening out. You have an opinion, your wife has an opinion. And if people are not willing to, let go because of, again, some, strongly held cognitive, distorted belief, it's going to result in a whole evening going down the tube.
Agree.
So it's all
So
preventable.
yeah. So back to your business. What's next on the roadmap for Emineo Pursuits? What are you looking to create or achieve over the rest of 2021?
21 is going to be the year to scale up, Adrian, and scale up again from, if you, let me ask you before I answer it, what have you heard so far in the last 15-20 minutes? I know you've not had time to reflect on it, but based on what you heard, do you think this adds value for people?
Well, definitely. I think mental resilience is something that is often, well, it's like air, you don't see it, you tend to take it for granted. And
Yeah.
I personally experienced that very well 2 years ago when I was in Delhi. I was still smoking back then, but Delhi PSI was around 300 plus. And I was asking myself, why the hell am I still smoking? I was actually craving for fresh air. And I decided then to quit smoking. And I've been off it since.
Congrats.
So, and it's things like that, you when things are good, you don't really care. You don't really when you're making a lot of money, you don't care about saving, you don't care about retirement.
Exactly.
Mental resilience is the same thing. When things are okay, doing well, you don't bother building up the muscles. You just, in a way, like how we behave, you don't go to the gym, you just eat junk food,
Truly.
you don't care. But it's definitely an important part, which is why I believe everyone should really just spend a bit of time every day to do that thought exercise, to go through some meditation practice,
Truly.
to really focus, because it's not a lot of time. I'm not asking for like 2 hours, 3 hours kind of thing. Just 15, 20 minutes just to sit down, thought
Absolutely.
exercise to think through. I think all this would be very useful for anyone. And I truly believe my ability to quit smoking, plus my ability to quit caffeine as well,
Awesome. Well
and
done.
to some extent alcohol, but I still do it on a social
That's
basis,
okay.
was due to the mental resilience, which I built up over time, not so much through thought exercise, but I think primarily through meditation.
Awesome.
And I couldn't have achieved it without meditation. I truly believe that, because 2 years ago wasn't the first time I tried quitting smoking. I've been trying to quit smoking on and off for the longest time, at
Wow.
least 30, 50 attempts, but it never
Fantastic.
sticked
Yeah.
until 2 years ago.
I can totally understand. Yeah. So to your point now, we just hope that the message gets out, and that's the reason why, when you and I discussed about this podcast, I thought it was God sent. When people get to hear that there are other alternatives which are, very benign yet very powerful. So I hope it will, translate into, more inquiries from, concerned organizations who find the genuineness of what we are talking here in this podcast, who think that what we are saying makes sense. And it can just start with a simple consultation, right? We that's how it always, we have a methodology, by the way. Our company has a methodology in which we approach these things. So it will start with the diagnostics to see what the organization wants, where is it. Like I said, it always starts with values. I cannot come and fix a problem unless you first fix the things that you can fix, right? So if you are already an organization that's having a toxic culture, you fix that first. So that's where the consulting value comes in. So based on that, we take it step by step. And I believe in, leaving what is called residual value. It's what happens when Hari is not in the picture. Yeah, that's how we learn in L&D, right? It's not about when I'm there and I'm, you do it in front of me, but I'm gone, everything is gone. No, that's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in leaving residual value for employees and the people whom we touch, that after we leave, there is still residual value that people will then follow and do it.
This reminds me of a saying that I read before. It's what you do when people are not looking that truly matters.
Yeah, yeah. Integrity is one of those things, right? It's definition of integrity is exactly what you said. And so we practice it, and yeah. So I think to answer your question, Adrian, we are hopeful that organizations will embrace this approach. That in turn will translate into inquiries. That in turn will translate into consulting projects. We hope to get compensated in some form. Like I said, we're a social enterprise. The money is not something that I put front of people. You may not have money at all, but if you generally think that what we are doing is of value to you, take it for free. And talking about taking it for free, right now, Adrian, I'm willing to open up an opportunity for your audience to try out the assessment tool that we have. It's actually worth $200 in terms of market value. But you let me know, and if you have the link, I think you can drop it down in your podcast. Your audience can more than welcome to get a shot at trying out the holistic wellness assessment. The disclaimer here is that it's not a medical assessment, but it's a self-assessment. Before they do this assessment, I would encourage the readers to go to my website and look at the definition of what each of these 6 dimensions really mean. And then when they do this assessment, it can add tremendous value, because after they do the assessment, they will get a PDF report which they can download. And in the PDF report, they will be able to review what they rated on each of these assessment statements. And the beauty of this tool, Adrian, is every statement is an actionable statement. Okay, so yeah, so if you have that link, you can share it. And with that, I think we've probably run out of your time. So I just want to give the floor back to you.
Thank you so much. The link will be added into the show notes together with all the other ways you can find out more about Emineo Pursuits. Harry, thank you so much for this lovely conversation. We've definitely gone over time, but I really enjoyed myself speaking with you. And I wish you continued success with all the things that you're doing with Emineo Pursuits.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Really loved the conversation. Take care, and wish you all the best as well in your future career.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. You can refer to the show notes for links to more information about our guests and their businesses. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would be helpful to give a review on iTunes or follow me on Spotify. If you're using Overcast, please hit the star button under the episode. That will help get this episode and podcast out to more people who may find it useful. I'll see you in the next episode of The Adrian Tan Show.